I guess clarity is not step one. Clarity is step 3 or 4. But so often we treat it like the very first thing that we need, and it's not. Step 1 is rebellion.
Hey there, welcome back to the Mischief Movement podcast. I'm Zoe, your guide on this journey to shake up the status quo and design a life that truly makes you feel alive. If you've ever felt disconnected, stuck on autopilot, or trapped in a life that feels more like a treadmill than an adventure, you're in the right place. I know that change can feel scary, so let's turn down the fear and crank up the fierce as we transform your life from the inside out. Whether it's solo episodes packed with actionable advice or interviews with some absolute badass human beings who've dared to defy the norm by living life their way, we're here to inspire, activate, empower, and challenge you each week. My mission is simple: to help you reawaken your rebel spirit, break free from mediocrity, and design a life that's anything but dull. You only get one wild life, so what are you planning to do with yours? If you're ready to stop settling, start living boldly, and create a positive impact along the way, let's dive in and stir up some mischief together. Now buckle up and let's go.
Hey Rebel, welcome back to the Mischief Movement podcast. And if you listened to the previous episode, you'll know by now that this podcast is coming to its conclusion. And in light of that, what I want to do is to look at some of those big dream blockers with you, which I think will help to set the scene for what's to come. I'm not going to talk too much about that because I'm still figuring it out in my own head at the moment. But for today, I'm thinking that clarity isn't the starting point. Rebellion is. Okay. Now, a few weeks ago, I was standing in the supermarket holding 2 packets of pasta and I couldn't decide which one to buy. And I swear to you, for a split second, it felt like a metaphor for my entire 30s and 40s. That moment when you realize, oh, this isn't indecision. This is chronic over-civilization. We've been trained to be so bloody responsible, so sensible, so appropriate that when it's time to choose something exciting or true, our brain freezes like a browser with too many tabs open. So today we're talking about the biggest dream blocker of them all, and that is the myth that you need perfect clarity before you're allowed to move, because as you can probably imagine, you don't. When I started this podcast, I didn't actually know what I wanted it to become. I just knew that I wanted more mischief in my life, something that didn't require permission or a 5-year plan or a LinkedIn announcement. If I'd waited for total clarity, this podcast wouldn't exist. And to be quite honest, I waited a really long time in that kind of clarity, lack of clarity bubble, before I even got going. Eventually, I got so fed up with myself not knowing, and I just kind of went, fuck it, like start the podcast and you'll figure it out as you go. And I think that's true in so many different things. Tell me I'm not alone in this. But anyway, I followed the spark, not the certainty. If you've ever read The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, I'll recommend it to you. And that's exactly what he says. You move first and clarity catches up. I guess clarity is not step 1. Clarity is step 3 or 4. But so often we treat it like the very first thing that we need, and it's not. Step 1 is rebellion. Is doing something small and slightly disruptive that tells your nervous system, hey, Remember me, the you that still has opinions and desires. If you want an example, you could email your boss to ask for a conversation you've been avoiding. You could say no to a plan that you don't want to go to. Um, try the thing that you've been overthinking by doing it badly, or change one tiny routine on purpose. Do you remember when I talked about micro mischief? Well, I think that micro mischief creates macro clarity. So that's pretty cool, right? I think there's this moment in your late 30s or 40s when you wake up and think, hang on, whose life am I actually living? Not because your life is bad, but because it's been running on silent defaults. And at that moment, it's not a crisis, it's more like a compass. I think it's your inner rebel tapping the mic and saying, oh, hey, is this thing on? You know, at least that is how it was for me. My life was pretty good, but I had just been living on autopilot until I woke up one day and realized it. Glennon Doyle calls it the knowing in her book, Untamed. The quiet voice that already knows what's right, but gets drowned out by expectations. So this week, instead of trying to figure out what you want for 2026, just do something that breaks your normal pattern. One act of micro mischief. One tiny refusal to live on autopilot. And watch what clarity decides to do with that. Maybe you could try something that you've talked yourself out of. Maybe you could write yourself a list and call it things I would love to do if nobody judged me. Maybe you just want to spend an hour or so following your curiosity with no productivity goal. Because quite honestly, I think that is another huge problem, especially when it comes to clarity. We live in this culture where everything is based around productivity, and clarity often comes in the spaces between other things. And when we don't have them, we just move from one thing to the next, from our constant tasks in our daily jobs to then, I don't know, parenting in the evenings, and then getting all the house stuff done, and then going to bed, and then getting up in the morning, and then continuing the cycle. We've got to get off that productivity hamster wheel and create some space as well. So all this to say, I guess, you don't need a 5-year vision to begin. You need a pulse and a spark, and the guts to follow the thing that whispers instead of shouts. Because clarity isn't a prerequisite. It's like a side effect of your own momentum. So, on that note, I'll be back for another dream blocker next week. In the meantime, if you want to comment on this episode, if you want to share with me something that you plan to do, or how you're feeling about 2026 and the pressure to come up with a word of the year or come up with our big goals and perfect plans. If you're stuck and you want to talk about this with me, please get in touch. You can find me on Instagram at The Mischief Movement. You can also find me on Substack, or you can find me on LinkedIn as Zoe Greenhalf. So I'd love to get your feedback. I'd love to hear where you're struggling, because I'd love to help. That's one of the reasons this podcast has existed all this time. And it's exactly what I'm going to be bringing into what comes next. So have a brilliant week and look out for the next episode, which will be dropping sooner than you think.
Wait, hang on. Before I go, a quick note. As this podcast moves towards its final chapters, the best place to stay connected is my mailing list. That's where I'll share what's unfolding next when it's ready to be shared, without noise and without rushing. You can also find me on LinkedIn, where I'm still very much around and thinking out loud in public. There is something new taking shape behind the scenes, but I'm giving it the space to fully form before I speak about it properly. If you're curious, patient, and happy to sit in the in-between with me, you'll be in the right place. Thanks for being here, and I will speak to you again soon.